Welcome back, friends, to Ask Dr. Sexman. This is our third episode. Today we're going to tackle one of those topics that always comes up in discussions of sexuality, and that is, what about masturbation? Is it okay? Is it a sin? What are we supposed to do with it? You may have heard some crazy things. I've heard some crazy things that people have to say about masturbation over the years. I've heard that parents have told their kids, folks that I've talked to, that masturbation can do physical damage, like it can make you go blind. Somebody tells their child that masturbating too much will make you go blind. I've heard somebody say that masturbating can give you diseases on your hands because your genitals are dirty and gross. That's not true. Your genitals are not dirty and gross. You should wash them because, hygiene's good. But God did not make your genitals dirty and gross. He made them good. Anyway, a lot of weird things being said about masturbation out there. One of my favorites is that every time you masturbate, a kitten dies somewhere. But I'm not a cat person. If you are, then just forget about that one. So anyway, what does the Bible have to say about masturbation? The answer really is not very much. Sometimes people bring up Genesis chapter 38. There's a story of a man named Onan. Now, Onan marries this woman who is the widow of his deceased brother. Jewish law tradition says that he's supposed to marry her and that he's supposed to try to have a child with her, but the hook in the law and the tradition is that when he has the child, that child is going to belong or going to be credited as the son or daughter of his deceased brother, and he's not down with that. He doesn't want to do that. And so he has sex with his wife, and as they're having intercourse, he pulls out, and the Bible says he spills his semen on the ground. One of the more graphic descriptions the Bible has to offer us. So he then gets killed by God. Right? So a harsh story for our man Onan. And as you can probably imagine, people who want to draw the story of Onan into discussions of masturbation, you can kind of see where that train's going for them, right? That masturbation is deplorable, and if you do it, that God will smite you from on high and strike you down. That's not really what's happening there. Okay? Onan is, first of all, he's not masturbating. He's having intercourse with his wife. He is not following all the way through the process. Instead, he is lying, and he is deceiving, and he is failing to fulfill his duties as a brother in ancient Jewish law and custom. So that is what God finds evil in his sight. It's not the fact that his semen ends up on the ground or somewhere that's not supposed to be. So we'll just set that one aside for right now because I don't really think it's all that important to our discussion anyway. So with no direct passage about masturbation in the Bible, there's nowhere that the Bible says you should not masturbate or go ahead, give it a go. It doesn't say anything specific about masturbation. Instead, we'll talk about one of the most important principles the Bible has for us on sexuality, and that's the principle of lust. Probably Jesus' most famous sermon or long speech that he gives to people is in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. We usually call it the Sermon on the Mount. If you read it, there's all kinds of famous things in there, quotations and statements that Jesus makes that people have said over and over and over again in different places. One of the things that's in there is a list of laws that the Jewish people have always had, but Jesus is essentially saying, you think that this is the law, or maybe this is the law, but really loving and honoring and serving God goes way beyond what you're doing. And so he's really cranking the bar up on his followers to say, you think that this is okay because that's kind of the tradition, that's kind of the law, but I'm telling you that this is really what's going on here. And he does that on one occasion in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30, and this is what he has to say. He says, you've heard that it was said that you should not commit adultery. In other words, married people should not be having sex with people that they're not married to. He says, I tell you, so this is where he's raising the bar. He says, I tell you that anyone who looks at someone else and lusts after them has already committed adultery in their heart. Right? So Jesus is saying it's really not the action that matters. It's what's going on inside of you. It's what's going on inside of your heart. And then he gets real serious. He says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck that thing out and throw it away. You're better off losing a part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Pretty high stakes. He repeats a very similar thing, says if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. Better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell. So Jesus is really, really serious about this concept of lust. Lust is the exact opposite of love. Love, the Bible tells us, works for the good and the flourishing of another person. It says, your needs are more important than my own needs. That's love. Lust says, you essentially mean nothing, and my needs are all that count, so I'm going to use you for whatever I need you for. It is a crime against God himself. A lot of times people will argue for things like pornography, masturbation, and kind of the things that people think about when they masturbate. They'll argue that it's a victimless kind of crime, and I'm telling you that biblically speaking, it is very much not victimless. It's a crime against God. Just like if you went up to me and said, man, Dr. Sex Man, I really love you, and I just think you're the greatest thing that there is. And then you walk outside and you smack my son. Well, whatever you just said to me, it means nothing anymore. You can't say you love me and mistreat my child. In a much more beautiful and perfect way, God has created and loves every person on the planet. And when we use somebody for our own gratification, we are committing this sin against God by using his created child without any hint or idea of what's good for them, of acknowledging their humanness, acknowledging the fact that they bear the image of God. It's thoroughly a selfish act. And that's why God is so dead set against lust. Okay, so that's going to bring us back to masturbation specifically. Now, technically speaking, what masturbating is the process of one person stimulating their own genitals to have an orgasm. It again seems innocent enough, and I guess technically speaking, it is probably possible to do that without ever sinning. But here's the problem. Everyone I ever talked to, and certainly in my own experience in my life, masturbating pretty much always kicks into the realm of lust at some point. Because there's just only so much a person can stimulate their own genitals before or until an image of another person pops into our heads. And once an image of another person is in our brains, now we're lusting. Now we're using that person for our own gratification. And that is definitively a sin, and that definitively strikes at the heart of exactly who God is. So it's a little bit of a good news, bad news situation on masturbation. Good news, I guess, in the sense that the Bible doesn't specifically condemn it. The Bible doesn't specifically say anything about it. Bad news in that masturbation is almost inextricably tied. You just almost can't pull apart masturbation and lust. I mean, you have to be really honest with yourself about this, because God sees right through all of that anyway. So to the extent that masturbation involves lust, it is certainly wrong. It is certainly sinful, because lust really is one of those sins that strikes right at the heart of everything that God really stands for in loving people well. So in that sense, masturbation poses a lot of problems for Christian people, but that's what the Bible has to tell us about it. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, as always. I would love to hear from you. Contact me on Twitter at AskDrSexman, or leave a comment here on YouTube, and I would love to answer any questions that you have as well. More to come soon. Until next time, know that you are intentionally made, that you are fiercely loved, and that I am on your side.
Was to be completely unfazed by the uncertainty. It's fair to believe